Welcome back to the What's More podcast. I'm your host, Quinton Harris, and you're dialed in for episode 197. And I've got my standing co-host, Lenny Curry, back on the show. Always great to have you on the show, my friend.
Good to be back again.
Yeah, man. We've got some stuff to talk about. Some things that just happened the other night. You know, we're always talking politics here, and we're just coming out of a debate, right? Today we're going to do some hot takes on that.
It's three against one.
That's yeah. Today we're going to do some hot takes and talk a little bit about this because I think, you know, for you and I, this was something that I think we both anticipated. We were excited to see. And I think there's a lot of people probably let down by this. And there's some explanation behind some of this stuff that's happening here. You know, we might not be popular after this episode, but at this point, I really don't care because what I do care about is facts over fear. I continue to say that as that's what this should be. And, you know, that's why I like bringing you on the show because you offer perspective to this because you've been in debates before. I've never been in a debate like that. You've seen it. You've seen the good. You've seen the bad. And as you like to call it, the ugly side of what really happens here. Again, thanks for bringing on the show, bringing your take, your perspective.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I'm glad to offer my perspective. You know, your intro there just made me think about something that I haven't thought about in a very long time. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be on a debate at that level on that stage, national television. The stakes are so high. Because I can tell you, just being on a stage numerous times over 2 elections, running for mayor, that was very stressful. And that's simply one city, one television market. So both candidates, anybody that stood on a presidential stage, the nerves, the stress just have to be at peak levels, right?
Yeah.
Peak levels.
You know, do you think it's more unnerving to not have an audience? Or do you think just doing it straight up with 2 basically commentators right there, people, you know?
I think it's unnerving not to have an audience.
I can't imagine. There's no one to read.
I think.
There's no vibe. There's no nothing. It's just you and a moderator.
And maybe a comparison of anybody, if anyone's ever done a television hit, if you're on a live set, like we're on a live set right now, you and I, right? We can play off of each other. If you're doing a satellite hit, right, and you're the person being interviewed and you're staring at a camera and all you see is a camera, that's pretty unnerving. Which is probably I never did a debate without anyone in an audience.
I couldn't imagine. Even when we do the one-on-one episodes, you know, and I'm just doing it by myself, I have to look into a camera. It took me like 20 episodes to get used to that. That stuff that's hard, right? And that's what I envision they're going through there. You know, you've got these moderators. Clearly, I think you could argue were one-sided with the questions and how they did it, but that's an opinion that's just my opinion. It felt very one-sided here. But I think that the questions, for the most part, they were fair questions, needed to be answered. And then as we get into this, you know, I think there's some things that I look at on here. Quick takeaway from me. I think the American public lost that debate. That was the first thing I said to my wife when I got done with this was like, there was no winner. That was 2 hours of nonsense for me personally that I was very excited to see. I wanted to hear about some of the policies. The big question I never heard come up, I wanted to hear about federal deficit. I wanted to hear about what were we going to do with the housing industry. You know, things that obviously I'm vested in. I wanted to hear about. I want to hear about inflation. How are we going to tackle? What are we going to do? How are we going to work with people across the aisles? That's not what happened. I would have rather see them talk about their golf game than what I saw in that debate. But for you, you know, what was your take from a high level perspective between Trump and Kamala? What was your take?
I think that, look, the people that were most tuned in, that probably really were looking for answers, are probably undecided voters, right? Whether you're an independent and you haven't made a decision, or you're a Democrat and you haven't made a decision, or you're a Republican and you haven't made a decision. And that is a narrow slice of people, though, but they're looking for answers. Those people are not locked into a candidate for just because that's the candidate or that's the party, if you're undecided at this point. And I think, you know, the basic stuff, man, like if you're a student, you got to put gas in your car. And you were putting gas in your car 3.5, 4 years ago. You're hurting right now, right?
Sure.
If you're a member of a family, a husband, a wife, whatever, and you got to put gas in your car. If you have to go to the grocery store, I mean, all of us have lived it. If you ever go to the grocery store, 3 years ago, if you just did your quick run, anybody that's done a quick run, hey, babe, I'm going to run to the grocery store and pick a few things up. 4 years ago, $15, $20, now $60, and what did I just get?
Easily.
The spending power of the family, of individuals, has so declined over the last 3 years. People are in serious financial pain. They're running up credit cards because they can't pay their bills. To me, that's the question of this election. And who's got the answer? And from my perspective, we've had 3+ years of this, and we had an economy prior to this.
Mm-hmm. So I look at this and I go, listen, facts, right?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but even though I voted Republican back in 1992, but Bill Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. This is where we are right now. Not to mention the uncertainty and instability of the world right now.
Huge X factor.
We are potentially on the verge of multiple countries being pulled into war.
Right.
And that's all developed in the last few years.
Absolutely. There's some things in this that I looked at. Here's some things I wanted to hear about on here, to your point. Inflation, right? I wanted to hear about that. But I wanted to hear about how right now we have, to your point, the highest credit card debt in the nation ever that we've ever had. And that, I think that's straight to your point. People are using their credit cards to debt finance their lives to live, not to buy material things, but to live. We're seeing that. More part-time jobs, more second jobs in the history of the United States. That's not a healthy economy. And I'm not saying, hey, the administration did that. I'm just saying this is a fact. This is where we are. What are we going to do to fix it? That's what I care about. Give me some sort of financial policy. Give me some depth to this conversation, not bickering.
Agree.
And it's it's literally disrespectful to the voter just to sit up there and do that. No one's right, no one's wrong. How are we going to fix it? Work the problem. That's what I want to talk about. And we're not even getting to those. Hell, that wasn't even a question. Shame on the moderators for not even bringing the real stuff to the table the American people wanted to hear about. That's where I was upset. They're answering the questions that the moderators are putting on stage.
That's right.
You sound like they can divert that question because they'll cut them off and say, well, your mic's muted. That's not what I asked, right? So I think that's where it started. But those are the things I wanted to hear, right? That's what I wanted to talk about.
Well, I think the good news is we have so big media no longer controls information flow, right? There's shows like this. There's shows all over platforms everywhere that can communicate what's happening. So there was a time in our nation's history that debate would have been Americans' really only opportunity to see the positions, the policies, the ideas, and the personalities.
Yep, good point.
We now have, between, again, all the social media platforms, the podcasts, people have access to tons of information. And my hope is that people that are unhappy right now or hurting will take a look at the policies of the former president and how they worked 4 years ago and the policies we have now.
Right.
And if, in fact, there is a policy change by the vice president, should she be president, not only tell us what those policy changes are, but explain why. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm all for people changing their mind. We should, as we grow and are exposed to new ideas and information, right? But it's pretty rare you change your mind on, you believe 10 things, you change your mind on 8 of them.
Right. Well, if you're the person that says, hey, listen, and I think probably up until about 6 months ago, this argument would have held water that, hey, listen, if you're worried about the national deficit now, the Trump administration did way more than the Biden administration. Until recently, the Biden administration has surpassed that. So when you have a candidate on stage, it's like, I'm going to give $50,000 for new business startups. Where's that money coming from? I'm going to give X amount of dollars to households. Where's that money coming from? We already have a national deficit that is roaring, screaming. It's a massive problem. Where is this coming from? And, don't get me wrong, you're going to have spending on both sides because neither one of them know how to control it. But I would have liked to have heard some sort of depth to that, some sort of policy to that.
I think, unfortunately, you are rare these days. It's a serious problem. I remember even 10 years ago, people were talking about that issue and took it seriously. It doesn't seem to be on people's minds these days. And it's probably because people haven't personally felt a consequence of that yet, right?
Sure. No doubt.
That day's coming.
Yeah. It's like inflation 2 years ago.
Right.
No one cared. No one cared. And we talked about on the show how long it takes to work through the cycle. We talked about the whole cycle and how long it works and the delays and impacts that can happen. And now that's a topic of every debate.
I mean, to your point, so when stimulus money's coming in, it's free money.
Right. Yeah.
And then rents are going up.
Everything.
Groceries are everything's going up.
Yeah.
Clothes are going up.
And you're okay with it because you've got extra income coming in to offset that. That's like what we're talking about here. It's interesting to see. I will say this, hats off to Kamala, and I will say this, she seemed to have controlled the tone of the debate better than Trump did. Meaning this, she never lost her cool. Her cadence remained the same. And that's something that I saw that I was like, okay. And then you see the next morning, there's these, you call them conspiracy theory people, that she had clip-on earrings and a head and an earpiece inside there. And, you know, I've seen the pictures, I've seen the stuff.
Right.
And, you know, you can really, you know, it's like seeing Bigfoot. You know, you can make out what you want there. I don't know if that was the case or not, but I know that she controlled herself much better in that room than maybe the person she was debating. And for me, that was like the thing that stood out the most from that, is that she may have got the best of him, got underneath his skin a little bit more than I expected to happen in that debate.
And I, again, not being on that stage, but just as us as people. So if you and I were sitting here right now, if there were 4 of us sitting here right now, and 3 of us came at you, you were here to make an argument, and we came at you as a person, right? The natural fight or flight. And we all know President Trump, it ain't going to be, it's not going to be flight, right?
True.
So I think maybe some of that was happening.
Yeah. So walk me through the cats and dogs thing. What the hell was happening there? Walk me through that. Yeah, I was like, am I time traveling right now? What the hell's happening? Where do you go off the rails with that? Because here's the thing I thought. Whenever he got to a question like that, like the ultimate response would have been, and her response to him after he said that was, and this is why, right? I would have been like, oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood the question. I didn't hear it because of my ear. I would have hit him with that. There's no way I would have went down that path. It was a very unusual response there that I saw. And I'm like, what just happened here?
It was unusual.
It was unusual. Fair enough. Fair enough. I think to your point, 3 people coming at you though.
Oh, absolutely.
You're like, you know what? It's fight. I'm going to come out with everything I got here. And I think, you know, I want to hear your opinion on it, because the more I looked back on it, maybe he was trying to make a point to certain people entering this country and things that are happening and that should not be happening.
It's a fact that services in cities are being overwhelmed by illegal immigration.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just a fact.
Yeah. There's a lot of facts to that. That's also affecting job reports and everything else.
I think we are absolutely a country of immigrants. Mm-hmm. We are a melting pot. That's our history. That's who we are. But we ought to have immigration that's thoughtful, right? That's smart, that's policy driven, that has a legal process, and that allows people to enter a system that is prepared to handle those non-citizens. Yeah. Because we got to take care of our own citizens too, right? Correct.
Where both people are taken care of,
right?
Not just it's one-sided, right? And I think that's a great point. You know, I wonder this about the current vice president. Here's something that I'm thinking as she makes her, I guess her ploy to be president of the United States. What do you think's going to change from what she's done now to what she's going to do? What is going to change?
What policy-wise?
Yeah, what is it?
That's a great question for people that are going to vote. If you're an undecided, if you are an undecided voter, that's the question you should be asking yourself.
Could we literally have a presidential candidate running on no platform right in front of us right now?
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what's happening. At least with Trump, you know what you're going to get.
Right.
You may not like it, but you know what you're going to get from it right now. And I have no idea what the platform is for the current vice president.
That's what undecided voters, I think, should be asking.
Yeah.
Undecided should be asking that question, and they should be doing their research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Any other takeaways from that debate?
I think you broke news. You said that there won't be another debate. Didn't you just read that?
Yeah, I just read that before we got here. He refuses to debate again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably a smart move for him, you know, because his last 3 debates really have not been his best look.
I mean, but, you know, I'll close with this then. The big media, they're not objective.
No.
That's not a conspiracy. I'm not throwing bologna sandwiches against the wall saying that. I don't want to say the real BS word. They are not objective.
Right.
And that matters, right? If you're going to trust a news source, they can have all their opinions. They can hate either candidate, right? We should never know that. We should never know their opinion on that presidential candidates, either the former president or the vice presidents. We should know their opinion on their policy or their decisions, right? They should be there asking questions.
Report the facts.
Not fact-checking one and not fact-checking other.
Just ask the questions. It's like when you have a sports commentator that went to that university, that's why they can never commentate those games. they're not allowed to do that. There's a couple rarities with Kurt Herbstreit, but they're not allowed to do that. That's a whole reason for that, so they don't show the favoritism towards their team, their alma mater.
Yeah. So
that's a great point, and I think that we're missing a lot of that. And at the end of the day, people are going to make their own minds up. And you said it best: they have many of outlets to figure it out.
There's tons of places to get info.
Yeah, and most of it's going to be very wrong, but there's tons of places to get it nonetheless, and that's unfortunate. But I always appreciate your insight in here and coming to the show and dropping some knowledge for us here. And it's always great to have you on here.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. If you like what you're hearing, check us out at What's Your One More with number 1 on our YouTube channel or on any platform which you listen to your favorite podcast, and leave us some reviews and 5 stars on there. We'd greatly appreciate it. Lenny, as always, thanks for being on the show.
Till next time.
Got one more shot, I'm gonna make it. One more chance, I'm gonna take it. I meant it when I said it, now it's time for me to do it. I got one life to live, so I put my all into it, yeah.